seem to be able to claim on benefits for anything. You know, they sort of looking after their mother, who's not particularly ill, you know, but to be able to make a claim is so easy today, you know.
I hate this sort of handout community. It really bothers me. I mean, all my kids have worked since they were able to.
My family have done quite well in life and they have been able to care for themselves and they're lucky. But those that can't, yes, there's always a need to help those, I think. You know, we're not all born quite so lucky, are we? You know, so yes, there should be help for those. But on the other hand, I think some need an egg on to start the day a bit, really, and get out and try.
I've been unemployed and it was fairly horrendous having to be on job seekers allowance, and I felt that was perhaps not best fitted to getting people back into work sometimes, because you were being pushed towards jobs that you might do for a couple of months and then you'd pull out again, because presumably they need to hit quotas, they need to get people back into work, and if you end up working as a cleaner or you're working on the shop floor and it's not something you're necessarily going to do for a long time, it seems slightly pointless to get someone back in and then they come back out, and it's a vicious cycle.
And it's just awful that anybody should be in that state of poverty through no fault of their own, through circumstance or illness or not ability to have education or anything. I think benefits are really crucial. I can't see why we'd want to take that away, but maybe, you know, not too generous.
It's a little bit hypocritical, because in the beginning when they did the benefit system, they did say, okay, if you want to be on benefits, you can't work, you have to stay like this to get a certain amount of money. And now all of a sudden when the economy is crashing, people that haven't worked for like 16 years with illnesses are now being tested to go back to work.
I haven't been in the market for a good year because of where I'm situated in Ealing. Even though I come in and do the school run with Aidan in the morning, the dynamics of my day, I can't really hang around or walk around and say hello to people. Only this morning I've seen that people have moved on and faces have changed, so things have changed drastically in a year. I was born nearby in Paddington, St Mary's Hospital, so just down the road. We were made homeless after my husband declared land to the Housing Benefit Department. They said because we were no longer entitled to our top-up of housing benefit, we had made ourselves intentionally homeless. In the first week in January, Housing Benefit called me. I was doing the school run, and she said, your housing benefit won't continue and you owe a back pay of £76,000. So that wasn't great news when you're starting the day off doing the school run. So yeah, that's how it started. I was bamboozled, really. £76,000 is woe money to me, so I was in shock. My father-in-law passed away in Ireland and he left some land in Galway, rural Galway, and that's the land we declared. When we went back to the council, because there was a big debacle when we did declare it, and that was all verified, but they said if you have a capital asset of more than £16,000, you're not entitled to any housing benefit or council tax benefit. They told us if we went to sell the land to keep a means-tested benefit, we would be done for diversing ourselves of capital to keep a means-tested benefit, and that is fraud. Whereas we only found out late last year that if we marketed the land, our housing benefit would have continued for a discretionary 6 months. It would be reviewed and it would continue again. So the wrong advice was given to us. Most definitely, if we lied, we wouldn't be in this situation. I've had high officials tell me that, and other people, you know, you're a fool, why did you declare, it's in a different country? They would have been none the wiser, which is true, but we were just trying to go about our day-to-day life and be honest. Vinny's in a special needs school in Ealing, so I have to, once I've dropped Aidan to school in Kilburn, I realistically have to give myself enough time to get back to Ealing. Because of my physical impairments, I sometimes am stopping and starting, especially if it's a bad weather day, I might be stopping and starting quite a lot. So dynamics-wise, it's just not a good idea for me to stay in Kilburn a long time and then head back to Ealing and wait for Vinny's bus. The move out of Kilburn has been detrimental, not only to myself, but to all of the children. Vinny is autistic, and I know a lot of people do home in on him and say, you know, you have an autistic child, it must be hard. But it's actually hard for all of the children have suffered because we were told the emergency accommodation would be 6 weeks to 3 months. So we said we wouldn't move schools, we'd keep them in as much of a routine as possible. Now, over a year later, still in the same place, the travelling from borough to borough has had severe effects on 2 of my sons' health, and it's just not been nice. They lose contact with their friends, they stop going to after school clubs, they can't do after school clubs in Ealing because the time they get back to do local activities, they're exhausted. And even Anthony, having to travel now that distance to work, he's always tired. You miss kind of in the summer evenings, we've had a few days now of beautiful weather, you'd get out and you'd go for a walk in the park. We're too tired. And it's, you know, I'll admit that to you, stuff like that has stopped because you're exhausted from the travelling. I have brought my children down here, but not in the last year. When we were living in our previous accommodation, which is a 10-minute walk, if I took the children after school, I'd bring them in here for a wander around. My son bought his first pet in the pet stall here, so the children know the market very well. They'd buy their birthday balloons here for each other from the cards shop.
We've just had figures that show that Brent is the worst affected borough with the overall benefit caps. We've got over 3,000 people who are going to be affected badly when the caps come in. We've got 3,000 people in temporary accommodation, and we've had that number of people for years. We've got 19,000 people on the waiting list. We've got, at the moment, 8,900 council units, though there are about 14,000 housing association units, but you add the two together. Supply does not mean demand. We've got high demand for 3 and 4 bedroom units, and of course those the units over the years we don't build a lot of. You know, if you apply for a 1 or 2 bed, you'll have a 5 or 6 year wait. If you want a 3 or 4 bedroom unit, you're going to be waiting till your children leave home, basically.
The council placed us in the private accommodation. Obviously, we went into a 4-bedroom house. There was no caps on benefits, so they could say, well, no, look, you need to be in a 4-bed. We'll place you in a 4-bed. Don't worry about money. Housing benefit will take care of it. There's no problems. But now we've been put into a temporary 3-bedroom house. It is cramped conditions. My older daughters, who are 16 and 12, they share the living room as their bedroom space. My husband sleeps in the single room that isn't glazed. The window isn't glazed at all because our son, who was in there originally, was getting asthma problems. And the house is in a bad state of repair. It was left for over 6 months. The garden had old furniture in it, bags of old clothes with matter in it, shards of glass. Vinny, I've spoken about before, he is autistic and 4. He has no awareness of danger. And he went to climb out the bathroom window. It took them 6 months to put a lock on a bathroom window. Now, someone said to me a while ago, why didn't you put the lock on yourself? I said, they tell you very clearly not to tamper with the property you're in. And if they're paid good money to maintain that property, they should come and put the lock on the window. Hi, sweetie, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Financially, my husband's a full-time bus driver at Crookwood Bus Garage. We receive child benefit and tax credits. I was actually recently awarded disability living allowance, which has been a great boost. For the fact is, in the morning I'm so stiff, I've been getting a taxi to the station with the children, and that's £8 a pop. So I was just absolutely overwhelmed when they gave me that decision, you know. So that's how we financially survive.
The £3.
Lovely.
And that's £5, yeah?
Lovely.
Have a lovely journey, right?
Care.
Thank
Okay.
you. All the best, yeah?
See you soon.
Thank you,
Bye.
thank you.
We were given another eviction notice 2 weeks ago on Friday, and that's for the 27th of May. It was a hand-delivered notice in the morning at 9 o'clock, and it just said we have to evict by the 27th of May. And I think that includes bailiffs and that type of scenario come in to evict you. My solicitor has in the last few days written to the council saying that they will have to get a court order to remove us. We want secure accommodation. We just want to be able to mend our family and have a home again. And, you know, no one has admitted to giving us bad advice, and they can't even prove they gave us the right advice because there's no paperwork. We just want a secure home to mend our family and get on with life, you know, because fair enough, I'm biased, but I think I've got some quite good children I'm raising in this society, and they're doing well.
The problem isn't just Brent's, it's London's, it's Great Britain's. There's a shortage of housing everywhere, so we need to build more housing. Because of the shortage of private housing, the demand is so high that it becomes out of reach of many of the people who need the housing. Central London, Kensington and Westminster, most ordinary people can't afford to live there anymore, but they need to work there. So London needs to be a working city, so we need to have sensible rents for ordinary people to be able to live there. The housing benefit change first kicked in several years ago when they introduced the cap on the local housing allowance for housing, and that had a big impact in Brent because we've had landlords giving eviction notices because they were capped at sort of either £340 for a 3-bedroom or £400 for a 4-bedroom, and because of the demand they can get double that from people who've got cash to pay. So they just saw the wonga in their eyes, and they've given people eviction notices, so they've had to come to the council for housing. And we've been quite honest with them that if we do accept them as homeless and we house them, we probably won't be housing them in Brent because we can't get the private landlords to give us the temporary accommodation anymore. So if they've been lucky, it's been over in the east of London. Sometimes it's Luton or Slough, but we've now had to have a policy where we're acquiring temporary accommodation in the Midlands because we cannot get private accommodation, which is temporary accommodation, in Brent anymore. Why have we got people in temporary accommodation for years and years and years? And why have it got to this position that people have been living off of benefits? The current government's got a different ideology. They want to blame the welfare scroungers, etc.
Up until this happened, I never actually thought about people on benefits. I just thought people are on benefits for a reason. I've just never thought about people that way. If you're in need, you're in need. But in the last few weeks, we've actually come across quite a bit of hatred. We've been getting some racial discrimination online. My daughter Sarah had to contact Facebook for cyberbullying, and we were told you need to be begging more, you're not begging enough, you need to beg for what you want. And for my 16-year-old to come to me and show me this, I was completely crushed, because I would never think of someone on benefits as being a scrounger or a beggar. 85% of people claiming housing benefit are working because we don't have a living wage, because people are on benefits for a reason. You know, I don't dispute you might find the odd needle in the haystack that tries to work the system, but you cannot categorise everybody as being the same, but people do. They really do.
Generally, if you're a council person, everyone's really homeless actually, because you just don't own a home. So that's what it is for me. I've met some serious homeless, I've seen worse situations of homelessness to what I'm going through. I've kind of chosen this life somewhat. I'm temporarily back at my lovely mother's house. I was living at the top of this park, and I've now moved to the bottom of this park, but basically there's been some benefit changes. So because my housing benefit entitlement changed, I've had to vacate the premises and find other accommodation. I think homelessness to me is how I'm living now. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit nomadic. It's just less of a home, it's just nomadic movements. Do you get what I'm saying? So you're not actually stationed and you're not stagnant in one place. You're kind of moving about, and, you know, so that's what it is for me. It's less of a home, less of a roof. And it doesn't make you any less of a person in that sense of the word. So the Juice Bar was founded because I've got an illness called lymphedema. So I was being over-medicated, different hospitals, and they just kept on getting it wrong. So the Juice Bar was my self-healing antidote, if you want to call it that. If you're looking at the rewards, it's been highly successful. We've won, I think, 11 awards and that. Been on BBC and helped quite a few people in the community, so in that sense it's been highly successful. Yeah. Hasn't bought me that trip to Jamaica though, no. Kind of began us helping other homeless individuals and other vulnerable individuals, because if you are vulnerable, the likelihood of you eating properly or being able to feed yourself on a really small budget is nil. So the juice bar was kind of like an alternative base for people like myself in that time. I've been offered quite a lot of finances to go corporate, but then I think that if I was to get my drinks in somewhere like Tesco's, they'd tamper with the product, and I'm trying to keep it 100% at least recyclable, ethical, that whole kind of, you know. So we're a social enterprise. The reason why we're a social enterprise is because I just found it very hard to make money, just to be in it for the money. Even the other day, we helped a guy who alcoholic. I don't know if I spoke about him before, Mr. O'Driscoll. He was in the IRA, got bombed, lost his memory and stuff, and everyone kind of was just always disrespecting him. So he used to come to the bar when we had it in Willesden, and I saw him the other day. Gave me a big hug and he's like, you know, you're the only person that kind of showed me love. A couple of people have done it since we've moved from Willesden, and that gives me more than if I had like 500 quid in my back pocket, to be honest. I mean, you go home and you smile, innit? You go home and you say, yeah, I've helped somebody. So, you know, if I get 10 of those people, I think it's more of a better, it gives me a sense of drive. For me, I know exactly what I'm able to do running my own social enterprise. So I know how much I can push. And I think maybe I wouldn't be as motivated to work for somebody else. I've done it already, and I was quite rebellious. So I think working for myself is the best option. So even if something was to happen to my benefit claim, I would have faith in it that I was supposed to stick to the social enterprise work that I do and work in the community. And I think I don't want to be tied down to 9 to 5. I don't want to be tied down to 9 to 5. I think I've become quite a dull person, to be individual, you know, to be honest. Yeah, and I kind of love what I do. No. So in 5 years' time, I probably won't be in England permanently. I think I'll be in warmer climates, to be honest with you, being a bit more, I need to be where fruits and vegetables kind of probably grow naturally. Doing exactly what I do here, but around the world. Like, I wouldn't mind kind of helping, I don't know, some lovely orphans somewhere. Teaching them how to become self-reliant, self-sufficient.
We're in my one-bedroom flat in Kilburn. I'm on incapacity benefit and income support. You get something like £2 a week extra on income support because the letter says your incapacity is not enough to live on. Why they don't give you enough to live on an incapacity benefit, I don't know. Well, me personally, they've said that someone like me has to pay the community charge, but I can't afford to. I don't have any extra money at the end of the week, so I haven't started paying it. I am resisting it, but I haven't got any money anyway, so am I resisting it or am I not paying it? I've got sciatica in my both legs and it's just so painful. I mean, I can't concentrate on dealing with customers for, 36 hours a week? I did try to get 2 hours a week work and that was hard enough. Who's going to want you when you say, oh, I can't come in today because my leg's hurting? I have looked at home working, but it's normally send us £20 and we'll send you the goods. Well, I've worked to pay tax to look after the sick. I didn't plan to go on the sick. If you can guarantee me that nothing will ever happen to you, then you're lucky. But it could happen to anybody. Yeah, I worked in Ealing for 4 years as a call centre worker, and then I was also a call centre worker, telesales. But then I started getting a bad back, so I had to leave that one. I was there for a year, and the way they treated people was just unfair. So I joined a union and started getting involved with trying to improve the place. I just started taking things out of the newspaper about call centres and sticking it up on the notice board. And it got people interested, and the main thing with me was I might ask them questions. I'd been trained to get a degree. They trained you, your whole job was asking questions over the phone. So when you asked them questions, they didn't seem to like it, and they were just wanting to shut people up, and they weren't the hardest questions in the world. So we did manage to organise a walkout where, I mean, it was very small. It was just making sure that everybody had the same tea break at the same time, and the management went ballistic about it because it was like losing control. So we did the walkout and we went into the canteen. I had some rebel music and some sweets and made some noise and stuff. And then we locked the door and they were banging the door trying to get in. And I just kept saying, well, you didn't want to speak to us. Why do you want to speak to us now? And then we were planning to go back at 10:15, but because they were going mad, we just continued it. And they started threatening people, saying, you're going to lose a day's pay for this, and trying to frighten people. But nobody did lose a day's pay out of it, so it did work. And it made, not us so much, but the supervisors understood it a bit more, and they did win some concessions out of them, and they stopped the zero contracts for them. So we may not have won so much, but they did. I do have an interest in political action, yeah. I wouldn't even say it's political, it just can be classed as political, but if your neighbour was being evicted, wouldn't you go and try and stop that eviction if you like them? Is that political? I'm on my way to the Kingsgate Community Centre where the Kilburn Unemployed Workers Group meets. The Kilburn Unemployed Workers Group is made of unemployed people who fight to ensure that they get the right benefits and also to protest against any government changes to benefits. It's made up of people who are at the deep end of things. It's the people who are actually claiming. There's no bosses between us, and so we're gleaning information from real cases ourselves, and then we can find out what protests we can do on behalf of any of the members. And we say never attend anywhere official alone, because if you go there and then you say something was said, what proof have you got that something was said? If you send a letter without it being recorded delivery, how can you show that it was sent?
The Kilburn Unemployed Workers Group, has 3 roles. It kind of gives people basic advice, helps people with problems that arise at the job centre, and we also campaign politically about the broader issues as they're affecting everyone. I mean, I'm notionally unemployed myself, so it's the kind of obvious group to belong to, but there's a whole job of work to be done because at the moment the political rhetoric would have people believe that the main reason for all the problems that are facing people are because of the unemployed. So the reason why there's people are taking wage cuts, the reason why rents are going up, practically every evil in society apparently is a result of people scrounging and people who are unemployed, people who are disabled. As though bankers and the banking and the financial crisis didn't happen. The government has successfully changed the kind of political talk to put the kind of blame essentially on the unemployed. So it's kind of important that those people organise. People are generally supportive. People say you're doing good work. I think the challenge is to get people to not be passive, and just feel like things are happening to them and then seek advice as and when they need it, but to be a bit more consistent and proactive in being involved. So like, you know, we meet lots of people and help lots of people with little bits of advice, you know, on an ad hoc basis. We'll go in with people, go with them here, or to Reed or these various other organisations in this network of organisations that deal with the unemployed.
A lot of people claim to be aggressive when they're at the job centre. How do you know that they've been aggressive? Just because the job centre have said it. But if somebody goes with them, they might calm them down or be witness to prove that they weren't aggressive.
Of course, you see on the day-to-day, you see people get angry, and in terms of people coming in the office and being violent, it's only once, you know, if something's happened or people's money been stopped, and obviously they've got, you know what I mean, they're supporting a family, they've got no money, they need, you know, to come in and vent their anger.
I'm not against some regulations. All I want is fair treatment. If you have fair regulations that are dealt with fairly, rather than people saying that people didn't write the right thing on a form, were aggressive when they weren't. That's completely unfair. So I just want fair benefits.
It's not sustainable. You're saying there's just too much guidance and so forth to get through. Every time they bring changes and there's new guidance. And it's not sustainable. I mean, I don't know, even though I'm not, you know, there anymore, and people phone up and ask me for advice, I don't know what to advise them because it's constantly changing, it's rapidly changing. You know, it's hard to keep track of it. It's hard to, you know, get your head around the guidance when I was there, let alone now. So I think the job centre staff are probably feeling pretty demoralised at the moment. You know what I mean? They're not sure what to do.
The PCS unions say that job seekers allowance should be £110 a week because of all the cuts that they've done. So it's not that we're making money, it's been stolen from us. It's not about discouraging you, it's if you can't find work, you should have the amount of money that you need to live on properly.
The Gilben Highroad is on the southern border of the borough of Brent. It's probably one of the areas that has kind of maintained something of its kind of old identity, in that people have kind of clung on here probably longer than in some other places, so there's still a strong sense of like working class history in the area. Like, it's kind of also the place where people from all around the south of the borough come for their shopping, so you meet a lot of people out and I prefer kind of street activity, so this is one of the places that you choose to come. I mean, the Kilburn Highroad is also like important in the sense of like the Kilburn Unemployed and what we're doing. Like, one of the things is that it's got like 13 kind of loan shark companies just on the high road alone, which are kind of like basically trapping people, like, you know, putting them in this kind of form of like really perverse financial like bondage, you know, people who are vulnerable, that they know are vulnerable, and the way they advertise and, you know, reel them in is like particularly pernicious. And so we're working with the Kingsgate Community Centre where we meet to try and challenge these loan sharks locally. We're at, on the Wilson High Road on the back side of it. Over here you've got the Brent Community Law Centre, which is where people go for the cases that need like legal advice. Next door you've got Brent MenCap, which is a mental health advocacy and campaigning organisation in the area, and then right next door to it is Wilson Labour and Trades Hall, which is where the trade union campaigning and organisation goes on. We're just about to go to Wilson Labour and Trades Hall, which is a campaigning base in the borough for the trade unions and the anti-cuts organisation, Friends of the Earth and other social activist groups. So we're upstairs at the Brent Trade Union Hall. This is the main hall. Downstairs is a meeting room where most of the meetings take place, and then we've set up a library among the offices next door, and that used to be, and that side, the Brent East Labour headquarters, where Ken Livingstone's campaign headquarters was. This room itself would have been hosted a 100-strong meeting of workers during the 1926 general strike, and the building as a whole was a campaign headquarters for the famous Grunwick strike, which kind of reshaped the kind of cultural and social, racial politics of the area. The benefit changes, to my mind, are like completely politically motivated. They're not to do with any budget deficit or anything economic in that sense. to my mind, and what we argue very strongly at the Kilburn Unemployed Workers Group, that this is kind of like the relationship it has with the trade union movement. On the one hand, and this is what doesn't get talked about, is all the attacks on the conditions for those in work, 0-hour contracts, the government talking about, scrapping the minimum wage or reducing the minimum wage, thousands of people working for free as interns or as work experience, and trade union freedoms. All of these things are attacks on people who are in work. So the point about invisibly punishing the unemployed is that those who are in work think, at least I've got a job, so they keep their head down. So while they're facing kind of cuts to their hours and all sorts of things, I think the reckoning that they make is, at least I've got a job. So that's, to my mind, the reason why the unemployed are being so hammered. Not because the country can't sustain that number of people on benefits, it's more that they want to create an atmosphere among those who are employed in the labour market is of one of precarity and insecurity, so no one demands anything more. In terms of more people working, it's a basic, it's a long history. For 100 years, the unemployed have been demanding a shorter working week for those in work and share out the jobs available, so that's one way of dealing with the employment issue. The pensions issue, people say it's unsustainable. The reason why the pensions have become unsustainable is because the last government did a big raid of the public sector pension pot. Companies have not been forced to invest in pensions, and the general kind of insecurity about the future of pensions has meant that people haven't invested in them. But if you look at the figures, pensions taken by themselves, if the government stopped raiding the pension pot, are perfectly sustainable.
It's the economy, stupid. It's as simple as that. People are feeling very, very serious reductions in their standards of living. Everything you hear and see says that the economy of our country, of the whole of the European Union, America, the whole world is undergoing a serious shift as far as the economic certainties used to be. And that causes anxiety in people. If, in some instances, it will go as far as fear. And it is a fact that we, along with every other Western developed nation, is going to have to tackle what is an ever-increasing number of elderly people who do not work, having to be maintained by a shrinking number of people who do work. Certainly the need to reduce the deficit is overwhelming. I don't think anyone would argue with that. When you say, is there a political agenda behind it, I presume this coalition, certainly the Conservative part of it, and given the sort of half-hearted opposition that the Lib Dem part of the coalition has put up to some of the policies, they do wish to see the rolling back of the state. But certainly with regard to the changes of reducing access to welfare benefits, this government has, in my opinion, employed very, very deftly black propaganda. And it does seem to me that the electorate has bought that black propaganda.
My solution is that you smash this system. It's called capitalism, which is built on exploitation and built on class society. And my understanding of how you can do that is through the empowerment and the organisation, the self-confidence and the activity of the world's producers, the working class. We produce all the wealth, we run the buses, we do the post, the transport, logistics, the factories, the mines. All of that is done by a group of people who depend day by day on the wage that these people give them. And while their profits, the bigger that whole operation grows, the poorer we get in relation to it.
The arguments for making sure that everybody is on a living wage are going to fall on stony ground, because the prevailing image, and there are facts to support this prevailing image, is that the country ain't got any money. We're never going to go back to where we were before 2008. It's simply not going to happen. And how we create and structure a new economy, which is not just for this country, but for the developed world, is something that all political parties are fighting shy of actually confronting.
The basic kind of slogan from 100 years ago, I think it was Rosa Luxemburg, she said it'll be socialism or barbarism. And, you know, in certain points of like capitalist crisis, you have those two stark choices in front of you. You know, at the moment, if you look at what's going on across Europe, there's a massive rise of the far right in Italy, in Greece, in Portugal, in Spain. You know, unless there's a positive socialist working class alternative, then what you're forced into is some form of barbarism, fascism. You know, that's the kind of European form that it takes until, you know, that is what will happen, that the rich will seize upon those areas of the working class who feel that there is no positive option and just foster a politics of hate and fear.
And if we keep stuck inevitably, as we always seem to do, on money all the time, we're never going to move forward. There has to be more thought about what is more creative, what is more imaginative, how can we actually, to coin another cliche, push ourselves out of the prevailing envelope. What is the kind of thinking whereby we can actually say, this is what we want to be as a society, this is what we want to stand for, this is how we think we should progressing, how are we going to do it without automatically thinking the only answer is to go and borrow something.
The reason I would come to Brent again, even though I don't particularly want to live in London, especially, is that to my mind, in terms of it's a global economic system that we live under, as you said. Brent, you know, being one of the most diverse boroughs in Brent, with this kind of like labour movement history in the area, isn't just important for what goes on in London or Brent or the UK. It's really a hub globally, like to my mind, who believes in a future that is like going to be fought for by working class people. This is like, you know, they have the UN, which meets wherever it wants to meet. They have the G8, which meets behind secure barriers all around the world. We have potentially a global conference of the working class in an area like Brent or, you know, in London as a whole, and that's an amazing potential. So there's a lot to be, you know, fought for on the streets of London.